Thank you very much for the invitation to be here, and it's really a pleasure to be in this nice place. And I will talk a little bit about the project, but before I will do some comments regarding the previous presentation and also to provide my vision. I'm a researcher, and as a researcher we do a lot of questions, and one of the first questions is why electrical mobility? And we talk a lot about the energy transition, the emissions, the carbon footprint, but we should have in mind what is the cost of energy that we have in Europe. And in fact, we are talking about €1 billion a day that we spend in fossil fuels. And this means that for Europe, it's not a question of emissions, it's not a question of energy transition, it's a question of money, and a lot of money, because we are talking in 300 billion euros a year, and if the transportation represents 25 to 30%, we are talking in €1 billion a day that you can remain in Europe. And this, we have a huge impact. The second question is why now? We already address some of the main points, namely the renewables, namely the price of the batteries and the technology of the batteries. But we have a third point that is very important, because this transition is made by the persons, is made by the citizens. And now the citizens have the conscience about the importance of the energy. And this is very important, because this is not the grid, is not the vehicles, is not the charging infrastructure, but we are talking in a change that should start with citizens. And we should work with citizens and understand what is the perspective of the citizens regarding the electrical mobility. And now I will talk a little bit of the project. The question of the project, here first we have the consortium, and we have 4 countries that are working, namely Portugal, Denmark, Slovenia, and Greece. We are addressing different perspectives or different angles about electrical mobility in each one of these countries. And here I have a slide with concept. It's very small, but I will talk a little bit what we are doing and why we are doing this in the project. And in the first point, we have all of these policies and business. About regulation, we have the opportunity to have here persons that are more expert than me in regulation. But what we did in Portugal is in the project, is to identify the main barriers and main targets that we have in different countries. But we have here another important point that is, I'll put it here, that is about business models, because we should understand that the vehicles create a lot of challenge, but also introduce a lot of opportunities. And we need to understand what are the value of these opportunities, and who can take advantage of this value. And when we talk with citizens, the main question is how much it will cost, how much I will have the advantage to participate in vehicle-to-grid. And we should have a business model and explain to the persons what are these advantages, and in a language that these persons can understand. And what we did in the project is go player by player in this value chain and understand what are the value that smart charging and vehicle-to-grid or vehicle-to-X can have for the different players, and considering the different services that can provide. Here is some examples that we did. I will not talk a lot. Afterwards, we have the technologies. And in technology, we have the need charging station. But more important, or also important, we have charging station itself, but we need to think that these charging stations should be able to provide flexibility, and for this we need to have some intelligence inside this charging station. And in the project, we are working in 2 different perspectives. One is to enable the vehicle-to-grid, because it's a technology that is starting. We have a lot of issues in terms of standardization, but we also are working in another solutions that can reduce the price if we want to install several charging stations in the buildings, in the companies, and so on. And this is a prototype that we developed in the project that allows this cost-efficient solution to be used in buildings and so on. Afterwards, we have another important thing that are the citizens. We should understand the citizens, we should talk with the persons, and what we did in the project is organize a kind of safaris, organize interviews, organize workshops in the 4 different countries that are in the project to try to understand what are the differences. If a person in Denmark have the same perspective of electrical mobility as a person in Greece or a person in Slovenia or in Portugal. Why this is important? Because when we want to create value and when we want to create new algorithms, we should understand what are the needs. Because if not, we will develop the algorithms based in our vision, and no one will use these solutions that we are proposing. Afterwards, we talk a lot here about infrastructure, and we need infrastructure in each 60 kilometers. We talk a lot about investments. We talk about the Hilton, but one of the things is I agree that the cars or the charging station have the same energy demand as an hotel, but it's a different type of load because we have flexibility. And this is a keyword that we are exploring in the project, how the vehicles can provide this flexibility, what are the business model, and what are the technological challenges. And in this, what we are looking in the project, that are the challenge can be completely different if we want to provide these services in my house, if we are in one apartment, if we are in our company, or if we are in the One Energy community or in a commercial building. And what we are developing in the project is try to understand what are the needs in these different infrastructure and different places and try to develop solutions and algorithms to increase the efficiency and the intelligence that we put in each one of the places. And here, we also should talk with the persons because the persons should change the behavior. Because the normal behavior of one electrical vehicle is not use the vehicle and stop in the gas station to charge the vehicle. No, the behavior that we should have is we charge during the night, we charge during the working time in the workplace, and when we leave to home, we have the car completely charged without stopping the gas station. But this is a change of paradigm that the person should understand. The behavior to use the car are different. Another important thing is that the car is no longer something that we use to go to the point A to the point B, is something that we can use to provide service, to provide some money, to earn some money during the periods. And if we think in the costs, we know that in the charging stations, sometimes the cost of energy is also high. But if we can have the possibility to have a PV system in the rooftop, in fact, the charging cost will be zero. And this is one opportunity, not only for the vehicles, but also for the renewables. And it's something that we will say we can do 100 kilometers a day or 400 kilometers or 40 kilometers a day. That is the average that we do. And we will pay zero for this. It's something that will catch the attention of the person. And afterwards, we can explain that we have technologies, we have algorithms, and we have solutions to do this. And this is what we are doing. And in the graphics, we did one example, how much money we can save, in this case, for a house. Afterwards, of course, we need players that will aggregate all of this information, that manage the solutions that we have in the public streets and in the houses and so on. And what we are doing here is develop a platform that can be used by the charging point operators, that is open source, that is developed based in microservices, is jargon that we use, but it's something that is very easily adapted and can be very easily used by all the players that want to use. And this will be open source, and is a big, one important output that we have in the project. Now, we have the challenge of the grid, and what we are doing regarding this. Here, in fact, we are developing methodologies to introduce the flexibility of the vehicles in the grid planning and afterwards in the grid operation. And if we think, how can we do this, and what is the challenge? And the challenge is that the models that we will use for the vehicles should be very simple, because we are planning scenarios for the next 10 years, for the next 20 years. And we should use simple models in one side, but realistic models in the other side. And what we are doing here, for example, in terms of planning, is we can use the flexibility of vehicles to replace or to delay investments, or we can use this flexibility directly inside the algorithms of the planning. And what is the main difference? The main difference depends if we have a lot of competition or not. Because if we replace investments to flexibility, this means that we should be sure that when we need this flexibility, the flexibility will be available. And this is the challenge that we are working, and the way how we are modeling are being tested, for example, by the Portuguese DSO in a marketplace. But the grids is not only the grids. We have the markets. Nowadays, we have the physical grid, we have the services, but these services are negotiated in markets. And what we are doing, for example, in Slovenia, is to design a market mechanism and a virtual power plant, and this virtual power plant can put the needs and flexibilities of the vehicles in the national market, but also in the local market. And here, in this case, we are not developing a demonstrator. It's really a field test, because we are changing the control centers of the DSO to include the flexibility of the vehicles. And it's something that will remain after the project. Afterwards, something that will start, the project is in the month 20, we have 42 months. We have yet half of the project to develop things. And what we are starting work now is what are the impacts of the vehicles in cities. And the main question here is how a policymaker, how a municipality can design a structure for the development of the charging infrastructure inside the city. And the cities should not look to cities, should look to the city in one layer, should think that we need a distribution system in another layer, and we should think that we'll have the public infrastructure, but also the houses and workplaces that can have charging station. And this is one of the main expectations and the main work that we have for the second half of the project. Finally, I will talk only a little bit about the demonstrators, because I know that I don't have a lot of time. But we will have 4 demonstrators. In Portugal, we'll demonstrate this in Açores, that is one island. And we have here some characteristics of this island. And we have here the places where we will test the demonstrator. And in Portugal, our main focus will be in the buildings, houses, and in companies, including the management of the fleets of these companies, and how can we provide services for the DSO. And because we are talking in one island, we have a big challenge, that is to reduce the wind curtailment. And one of the main things that we'll do is coordinate the wind production with the electrical mobility needs. Afterwards, in Slovenia, will be tested in the facilities of GenI, that is one of the players that we have in the consortium. These facilities are connected in the grid operated by the DSO that is also in our consortium. And here we have one picture of the facilities and parking lot. But as I mentioned, the main goal is to change the ADMS of the DSO, propose here a marketplace to negotiate this flexibility, and afterwards, of course, the CPOs can participate, the buildings can participate, and we have competition. Afterwards, the grid demonstrator, we also have Edno and PPC and Citroën in the consortium. And here, the main goal is to test some services like the green charging that Mr. Manos already talked about, and also test some price schemes to translate the constraints and what's happening in the grid, translate in prices that afterwards can be communicated to the users exactly to profit the moments where the price is lower, and mainly because the grid is not in stress. We have here some points where we'll do the tests. And finally, we have the Danish demonstrator that will take place also in 2 locations. And here, the main goal is to test methodologies to be used in parking lots with a lot of charging stations. And here, we will test in these 2 campuses, one in the university, and afterwards in a public parking lot, where we have this intention to test algorithms for parking, but also the coordination with the buildings where we have a PV installation. We have here only some pictures regarding what we are doing, the authentication, the tools, but it's only for show. And the last message is follow us. We are publishing regularly in the mailing LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and be updated of the results of the project. Thank you very much.